I cannot tell you what happened, Adam, but fear caused this accident. Even before the bike fell, I was already outside.
Bienvenidos, everyone, and welcome back to My Spirit Lives On, the show where we answer the questions of life and the afterlife. Today, my guest is a legend from the NDE world. Her name is Dr. Ingrid Honkala. She's a former marine biologist and oceanographer for the U.S. Navy, as well as for NASA, and she's also had a few near-death experiences and even written books about it. We're excited to have Dr. Ingrid on the show. How are you today, Doctor?
Wow, Adam, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Thank you for having me in your channel. What an honor.
Just got your book finally yesterday in the mail, and I was reading as fast as I could because it's very interesting, and I also have a few questions for you. Could you take us back this time when you were about 3 years old and you fell into the water and you had not one, not two or three, but a total of 4 NDEs over your life?
Yes, and I hope not to have more.
Increíble, yeah, por supuesto. I hear you. Okay, great. Can we go back to event number 1? How did that go? And you got some special learning abilities after that NDE?
Yes. So,
How did that happen?
wow, this all happened. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and up there in the Andes. And my parents would leave us at the care of a maid. And when they were not around, this lady didn't pay attention to anything we were doing. And then one day, my oldest sister, she was close to 4. Like you mentioned, I was close to 3. Decided we both, hey, let's go play in the patio. And the thing about the patio is that there was a tank. And guess what, Adam? We supposed not to play in that tank because we didn't know how to swim. And what is the thing you're going to do when they tell you not to do it? Right there, where the fun is. And then we didn't understand about danger. And then we grabbed a ball and decided to play cash across the tank. We climbed the tank. My sister threw the ball. She didn't apply enough force. I thought, hey, I can grab the ball. I leaned forward. The ball rolled and I lost my balance and fell in the tank. Being that little, oh my gosh, imagine that. Yeah, never. I had never been in a pool. We didn't have a bathtub. So I didn't know that if you fall in the water, that if your head is underwater, you cannot breathe. So 2 things happened here. The first impact was this water being frigid cold. Like I said, I was born up there in the Andes, not because I'm from Colombia. I am from hot weather country. Bogota is very high up in the Andes. So the temperature that early probably was 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the impact of the frigid water, just right there. And I mean, took my breath away. And from that, it was the horror, why I cannot breathe. And when people ask me, and you mentioned you remember this with all clarity, yes, I do. When people ask me, how can you remember? I said, how can I forget? I have to tell you that drowning is one of the most horrific experience I think a person can have, because breathing is life. Imagine finding yourself in a situation in which you cannot breathe. And then I am in this terror when it comes what I call contrast. And I'm going to mention a lot this word contrast because this is answer that question of how can you remember? I said, after being in that absolute horror, the peace, the serenity, the tranquility. I didn't know what happened, Haram. I didn't have a clue. I just knew that one moment I was fighting to breathe in a complete state of horror. And now I didn't need to breathe. I didn't need to go out of the tank. I didn't need to do anything. And then it comes the next contrast, and is that I was born in a house, I live in a house that was noisy. And the last thing I heard was there was birds, there was dogs, there was always noise. My sisters, and my heart beating in my chest like a drum in my head, and then it came the silence. And it's what I call the silence behind the silence, that I'm so profound, so deep, that even after the experience, for the rest of my life, I craved that silence. So how can I forget? I wanted it back. And it took me many, many, many years to understand that that was not an outer silence, that was an inner silence. And why do I say inner silence? Because it was peaceful and it was like serene, and it was like going back to the experience. The next contrast, this tank was a very dark space. And the last thing I saw with my eyes open was darkness. And suddenly, light. So imagine to be being in a dark room, and suddenly you have light, and the light came from below, and it was able to illuminate the whole surrounding. And I'm like, now there is light. And then it is when I started to see bubbles, and the bubbles are surrounded by light, and it's by like with this childlike spirit, like, whoa, bubbles. I started to chase the bubbles, and when I turned around is when I saw my body. And my body is just there floating, suspended in the water. And I'm like, wow. At that moment, I had the clear knowing, the clear realization that is my body. And I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel scared, nothing, not even shocked. It's like, it was like familiar. And I'm like, oh, that's my body. But I can tell you that the one thing that shocked me was to see the eyes open. Why? Because you know how we say that the eyes are the mirror of the soul? It was the sense of, whoa, those eyes are empty.
Hmm.
Like like the body. And I came to these kind of realizations later in my life, that it was like a costume. That body was empty, and seeing those eyes like that shocked me strongly.
The light in you left the body, so the eyes were dark.
Somebody with the eyes that are alive, are like, I like emotion, shiny,
Mhm.
like you can tell what is this person feeling by looking at the eyes, and these eyes were empty.
Interesting.
And then the next contrast was that I was born as a very sick child, and all I knew, Adam, was to be ill. I didn't know anything else. I was born with respiratory problems, and now I am the state of absolute well-being. For the first time, I'm like, what do you think happened when I saw the body? I'm like, I'm not going back there. And I made that conscious decision. I'm not going back into that body. And I turned around and I left the body behind. And then I started to see flowers, and these flowers were blooming. So I even this bring me to think. Imagine a person that has been very, very sick, that have been in a body that is had been sick forever, and now you are in this state of incredible well-being. You don't want to go back there. See, and it's nothing to do with love, or it's just at that moment I was feeling incredibly well. And then these flowers that appear bloom from nowhere pick me up, and now I'm being carried by these flowers. So I'm just in like, oh, this is so good. Just resting, just like, oh, this is amazing. And then in like a blink, I appear floating above the maid. And you know what I'm going to recount now is so important, because it's the part of validation. Because it's like people always want this validation. How you know you were not imagining it? How you know that is not your
Yep.
brain? Well, now because we are moving to a different realm, the part in which I'm not just in the tank. Now I'm witnessing things to the point that even years later, if you ask a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, what you were watching on TV, or what were your parents, not even because if it's your favorite show, you might even remember it. But what are your parents watching on TV what were they watching when you were a little child? I don't know. Guess what? When I saw the lady, I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And she's listening to a soap opera in the radio. And I even was able to know with clarity what she was listening. This memory was important because later it will work as validation.
Hmm.
Years later, I told my mom she was listening to this specific thing in the radio. And we went to do the search, and yes. And I said she was in this room and she was doing this. And wow, yeah.
So you had the clairaudience or like the clairvoyance as only 3 years old. Well, your spirit is ageless, right? So,
Yes,
but
yes,
you had
of
that.
course, and the spirit is now that is what is called non-local consciousness. Now I'm not acting from the brain. Now I'm acting from, let's call it, the capacities of the soul. And this lady didn't. Nothing happened. Nothing happened in this room. In another blink like that, I appear floating above my mom, and then my mom is close to her bus stop. And I have to give you a little bit of a background story. My mom got a new job. What happened when you get a new job? You're so excited about it, or you're so anxious about it, or you're so preparing yourself for it. All your focus of attention is there. No, and the moment I was floating above her and I said, oh, that's mom, she stopped. Look, this is incredible. I think this is the part of the story that even blow my own mind away. It blows everybody's mind away,
Hmm.
because it's the fact that she was able to feel it. She was able to know it. And she stopped. She didn't hesitate. She forgot all about her new job. She knew something is happening at home with one of my children. And she turned around and started to run. And I have said two things about my mom, Adam. One, she was very intuitive. And two, that she listened to that intuition.
When that moment happened, your spirit was above your mother. Were you thinking anything to her like, "Hey, come and check on me," or check on Maria? No, just she just felt it, like
No,
instantly feeling.
yes,
Wow.
yes, and I have to. We can talk more about this, but remember, I wasn't planning to come back.
Oh yeah, you didn't want to come back.
So later, maybe I can bring this piece here, but later in my life, when I started to understand the purpose of this experience, that was one of my questions. I said, one of my clarities, the one that didn't want to come back was your ego mind. But guess what? Your soul had a purpose. So it doesn't matter what the ego wanted.
Mm,
The soul made these decisions, because I asked and I got the clarity. Like, that's the reason why you went to look for help. I'm like, if it was in my ego mind, oh, I would have left. I didn't want to. I made the
mm,
decision not to come back because the ego doesn't want to feel discomfort. The ego doesn't want to be in a body that is sick. The ego, of course, if you give that choice, the choice is never to come back. But
mm.
my sole purpose was like, oh no, wait a minute, you have you have an a purpose to fulfill. And this is the other thing. Now that we're at this part of the experience later in life, when I ask, okay, if I decided to come back and went to look for help, why did I waste time in the ladies in the maid's room? Why would I waste time going to the maid if she wasn't going to pay attention? And then this is the answer was incredible, because it's when I got the clarity. That is to show you this word again, contrast. What happened when there is no connection, when there is no love? This lady mistreated us. She didn't even have any kind of connection with us. And
Mm.
the answer, she was only a few minutes away from where I was, and my mom, that was blocks away, was the one that started to run back home. So it's like I got that clarity. When there is no connection, they will let you drown.
Hmm.
There is connection, unconditional love. Love doesn't have barriers. Look what happened. your mom was able to sense, to know. Even it was this understanding, look, you are the living proof that the connection between the spirit realm and the physical realm is real. Because my mom was able to know it. And look at, to continue with the story, I'm looking at my mom and she's running. And then I even wonder, like, why is she running? See, I did not have the intention of calling her attention. I'm like, why is she running? And then I got distracted because at the end of the street, there is a dog. And then I love animals. And the moment I feel the desire to be with the dog, I am with the dog. And I'm like, whoa. And then I see a park. And the moment I feel the desire to be in the park, I am in the park. So it's like I started to play this game of like going places because it was so much fun. So look, time and space as we know it vanished. And then it happened that in another blink, suddenly I am in a realm that is made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. And this is when, for the first time in all this experience, I sense like, I am home. I am home. And what is home? The home is the sense of familiarity, well-being, embrace, welcome, belonging. You have your favorite couch with your favorite show. Is that embracive state of being that people ask me, but if you spirit, how could you turn around and how could you do this or that? Oh, that's the key, Adam. We identify with the body. We identify with what we think we are. But at that moment, something happened. Is when I realized, like, wow, I am not that body. I am not that persona. I am not that. And is when I realized myself as a being of light. And then I started to feel the sense of that, even though I was too little to have what we can see clearly as an individuality, that sense of being an individual being started to dissolve. And I started to feel the sense of interconnection. I started to feel the sense of dissolving. And even though I was still having a sense of self, even that at some point vanished. Aram, and I experienced what I call nothingness. Some people call it emptiness. Some people call it non-self. But when I say emptiness, people get afraid. Like, what? I don't want to go to the place of emptiness. But no, this is more amazing than you imagine, because it took me many, many, many years, 40 years to integrate and understand and put words, and even more years to put words into all this, because you have talked and you have seen many, many NDEs, and there's not really words. There's not really words to describe a state of being in which there's no narrative, there's no description, there's not color, there's no movement, there's no meaning. It's like, this is what I would call the space of pure potential. Absolute and pure potential. But to be able to explain, I want to give you an analogy. To be able to put it took me all these years to get this analogy. Imagine that there's a stadium. And this is something somebody someday shared, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. There's a stadium. And in the middle of the stadium, there's a little tiny box. And all I thought I was is that box. And suddenly the box opens up. And is nothing, because it's nothing I thought I was. But at the same time, is everything. Is totality, is expansion, is like going from this limited little space to this state of openness, abundance, totality. So I could just say, is the state of pure presence. and absolute consciousness.
The empty space you were in, was that also like the void, or was it different from the void? People talk about the dark space.
Yeah, I would just say that void is the place of pure potential.
Mm.
And what some describe as the void is the place of, is the absolute, is where at the same time everything, like when you talk about pure potential, is light that has not been yet manifested,
Hmm.
is the potentiality of the manifested, the potentiality of the light that will manifest. So when you talk in that terms, is the absolute, absolutely everything is contained there. So that's why it's wholeness. That's why you realize it's a state of expansion.
Mhm.
Imagine a point. Where do a point end and where do a point begins? And think about in those terms. In those terms, a point is infinitesimal because it's so small. A point is like,
Mhm.
but it's also infinite,
Hmm.
infinitesimal and infinite at the same time.
Hmm.
See, so it's the same thing. Is the void, but is the place of absolute creation. Is where everything, the place of the light that is in pure potential to be manifested. So it's like
Wow.
it's expansion and it's contraction, is all of it at the same time. And if there's any kind of emotion I could use, because really it took also many years to try, is what in some teachings you call the state of nirvana, the state of pure joy, the state of bliss, because you just expanded. You just imagine like you go and touch the nature that you are, the essence that you are. So when I am in this state of being, my mom finally arrived home and she knew exactly where to go, and she directed herself to the back of the house because of course the biology is the biology. There will be a point in which the body cannot take it anymore, and my mom arrived to the back of the house and my oldest sister was there. So this is incredible. There was not just me remembering this experience, an adult remembering this experience, but another child. My sister never forgot what happened that day. That's how impactful and traumatic was
Mhm.
for all of us. And she looked at my mom. People asked why she didn't call the maid, because we didn't supposed to play there. So she didn't want to be scolded. So she's trying to get me out. And when she looked at my mom, she's like, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her.
Mm.
Imagine my mom now. Immediately she knew that her inside was real and she pulled me out of the water. She said I was like a raggedy doll, no pulse, no breathing. It was like fingers blue, lips blue. And my mom, this is the other thing. There was these amazing synchronicities. She worked with children
Mhm.
and she had been trained to do CPR for children.
Oh,
So
good.
whatever she remembered and whatever she knew, so otherwise she would not have known what to do. So I meant to come see Alan when we talk about pre-planning, when we talk about the purpose of the soul.
Mhm.
My body and my ego said one thing, and my soul said, "Oh no." And this was a work between souls. My mom also had been prepared for knowing what to do, and she did everything she knew to revive me.
Hmm.
But I was so disconnected from this body that I didn't feel absolutely anything, nothing that was happening here. It was not of my concern anymore. And then suddenly I felt like I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And there was nothing I could do to stop this. It was like, but I resisted. That's why I said there's nothing I could do to stop it. I was like, no. And then I feel like I'm being sucked back, like I'm being pulled. And I'm like, no, I know that I'm back. Imagine going from the analogy of the stadium to the back into the little box. He's like, no, no, now that sense that the body was like, I'm trapped in this body, that it feels cold, it feels unwell, it feels tired. I was angry. I was very angry. And people say, oh, Ingrid, but you should be grateful. Your mom rescued you. So I'm going to give you another analogy. Imagine that you are a child and you're taken for the first time to an amusement park and you're
Hmm.
having a blast. And suddenly they say, we have to go home. We have
Yeah.
to leave the park. But you're like,
Yeah. Every time.
no, you're going to. I was having a blast and now I am back here.
Hmm.
And I wasn't just angry at him. I came with, let's call it an awareness, a consciousness, a clarity I didn't have before. And people again may ask, oh, but before and after you were just a child. Believe me, there was a before and after. And there's been already research and books written about this, how children can completely shift. And I even have pictures showing the before and after, Ingrid,
Hmm.
because I became angry, because I could not fit in this world, because I could not understand people around me, what was happening. And then I will look at myself in the mirror, Adam, and I will cry and I will pull my hair, scratch my face, and come to my mom and say, you don't understand. I am not this. I am not a child. Like you
Hmm.
just mentioned a moment ago, I am not a child.
And Maria wanted to call you by your name, Ingrid, and you said, that's not my name. I don't need a name. Like, it doesn't matter.
I don't need a name because I wasn't identifying anymore with this. Yes, and I will not see my parents just as my parents. I felt them as my equal because I had experienced the state of oneness. So to me, they're like, why do I have to listen to these people? I became very rebellious. So imagine how complex this is. And on top of that is like I would look at other children, be with other children. I could not relate.
Mm.
Even adults, I was like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. So you don't imagine how difficult this was. You now mention this. I'm about to be 3 years old, and to even validate more is that's a part of validation that something's happened to this child. Now I have these capacities you mentioned that I could read, I could write, I could develop mathematical problems, put together complex puzzles. I even have a language that was a little bit more, I mean, being 3 year old, but even a language that was more complex. So it's like, where is all of this coming from? And as this evolved more and more, and then I went to kindergarten pretty quick because it was like this child, we need to put her to do something because and there was no programs for children like me. And in a school, it was the sense I'm not learning anything, I'm just remembering. I'm
Hmm.
just remembering. But at the end, Adam, all these that seemed like amazing and all these that seemed like all these beautiful gifts and traits turn into burdens
Hmm.
because I could not feel like you say. I said, this is not my name. I am not a child. What am I doing here? What is happening to these people? I could not fit in. I could not feel that I belong. And it took me a whole lifetime trying to understand why nobody understood. And
Did you jump a grade? Like you were very young, but you were with older children in a higher grade level? Is that what happened? No.
no, because there was no program. So I was
Oh yeah.
bored. I was
Hmm.
bored out of my mind because I asked these questions or I yeah, I threw tantrums and I would tell the teachers that that was not the, or I will question them or I will add my own comments. Then they would just say, if you know everything, you sit in that corner and you let us be. So that was
Oh.
very, very hard. It was not the part where I could really function where I was. And the part that actually helped me cope with all these didn't really at the beginning belong to this physical world. What actually I would just say was my savior was the spirit world. Because after my near-death experience, I continue having what we know today as out-of-body experiences or astral traveling, whatever people want to call it. I even give it a different name. I have realized over time that we're multi-dimensional beings I
Hmm.
experienced it in my first near death, and from that moment on, and is the capacity to just pull bells, just open the door and access different levels of consciousness. And so far, I have had the opportunity to access 7 different levels of consciousness.
Hmm.
So that's what happened. So every time I went to sleep, I was accessing the realm of the light. I was getting back to that state of being, and I wanted to be there. And of course, my parents fired that lady. They hired a new one, but I wanted to sleep a lot. And since she didn't have to pay attention to me because I am sleeping, that's good. But now I'm spending a lot of time sleeping. And it was in one of these journeys when one day I'm surrounded by starlight figures. And I see your neon lights back there. So imagine like a whole white light, and now lights that are shining in all colors all
Hmm.
around. And I'm like, wow. And in one of those journeys, one of those, now people call them orbs. I call them starlight figures. And they are like, one of these is shining in gold. And this orb shaped itself into a human form. And it touched me, and it's when I realized you are a being of light. That's why I call them beings of light. It's just,
Mhm.
as a child, that's what I saw. And I said, and I had realized myself as a being of light. So it's like, oh, I get it. We are the same. And even to validate what I was seeing about us being beings of light is that later in life, I don't know, you remember a movie called Cocoon.
Mhm.
There was some extraterrestrials, and in one of the scenes, one of the extraterrestrials pulled the skin, and there's light, and I'm like, that's what we are. That's
Wow.
what we are, light. And like, of course, everybody look at me like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? But that's what I knew. So at that moment, it's like I started to see these beings, and I started to feel the sense of peace and calmness. But of course, I could not be the child that is left forever. And to solve this and to start feeling the sense of belonging here, one day I'm taking a shower, and one of these beings appeared in the bathroom, and it was shining in intense blue light. Again, I see your blue light there, and it was like an
Mhm.
intense shiny blue light. And I'm like, no, the beings of light are here. And from that moment on, I started to see them everywhere. And that was the moment, that's the beginning of a teaching that I came to understand many, many years later. Because when they were here, I started to feel the sense of belonging, the sense of wanting to play, the sense of, oh, I'm okay. So it's the realization that I didn't have to go somewhere. So it was the starting to understand that home was not a place, was a state of being.
Wow.
I started to feel, oh, I can be here. They are here. I can be here. I started to play, but again, like you mentioned, I was throwing tantrums. Like that's not my name. This is not where I want to be. And it's when later I started to hear the beings of light. At the beginning, it was just their presence, smelling them is like flowers. Oh gosh, and feeling them and seeing them. And when I heard the first time was in one of those tantrums, and they said that there's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realms of the light. Yeah.
So, a big realization you were having there as a child is you don't have to have the out of body, the NDE, in order to communicate and meet with them because you're seeing them when you go to sleep and then even seeing them in the shower. Because some people would be afraid, like, I don't want them to come when I'm in the bathroom.
Yeah. And but when you are little and you're authentic and you're free, you're not having yet these thoughts. So
Their guidance was helping you in your life? Were they only helping you when you had a big problem or a big question, or did they help you with everyday decisions?
oh no, throughout the life, at the beginning they didn't even have to say or do anything, Adam. It's incredible, just presence. Like when we just need that presence, that was it. And the moment they started to talk was actually later when they kind of say to me that people first that I had to be quiet because they were not going to understand. And I said, what is not to understand? That was my reality. See, I was, later in my life when I asked why my first ND happened when I was so young. And the answer was because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. See, I was pure and innocent. I'm not thinking of what they're thinking, what they're looking at. I was pure and innocent. So I didn't have any preconceived ideas of death or shame or guilt or God or love. Even later, when I understood what God was, I'm like, oh, I get it. When I was in that state of expansion, pure potential, pure presence, and I felt what I call bliss, oh, I get it. I was embraced by God. That state of presence, what was that? Oh, I was not alone. I was at home. See, when I talk about the sense of being invited, being welcome, you're not alone. I was completely embraced. I said I was in the arms of God. And this is one thing when people experience a state of oneness, because there's a little bit of a confusion. I said, and later in my life, I met this amazing teacher. She was a yogi, an Indian teacher. And then she said to me, I said, but I fused, I dissolved in oneness. And she said, but if you dissolve, how could you be here as an individual being? Doesn't make sense. And I said, oh. And she said, yeah, what happened is that imagine a baby, and the baby is in the arms of the mother, the father, and the baby is in such connection that the baby dissolves. The baby loses the sense of identity and dissolves in the arms of the mom and the dad. That's what happened. I was in the embrace of God, but at that moment, what happened is I was able to remember my essence, to remember my connection, to remember that love. See, that is a beautiful thing. So the beings of light were not here to tell me what to do, or they were guidance. So with this, I want to bring something, Adam, because people say how those beings of light are good or bad, how they're like not these evil beings,
It's
so they're
always the
telling you
devil. The devil's
what
doing
to
it.
do.
The
Yeah,
devil's giving you a positive, happy experience.
exactly. So I just say, here is the key and here is the clue. If anybody here in this physical world or in the spirit realm or whatever it is tell you, I am your guru, I am your teacher, I am your master, run, and run fast. But if any teacher, any guru, any master here or in the spirit realm guides you to look within, guide you to your center, to your soul, to your authentic being, to your own wisdom, that's the true teacher. Because anybody of these beings will guide you to remember you are the guru of your own temple. That's the true teacher. And that's what I learned from the beings of light since I was very little. Do not listen blindly to what we're saying. We're offering you guidance. You experience it yourself. Go and play the game. Like if I teach you a game, but you never play it, that's dogma. You're believing things without never using the tool. Is go play the game. Go have fun. Go use it. Go experience. Oh, and now you can come to the place where I ask you, do you believe this? And I say, no, I don't believe it. I know it.
So then you had that was your first NDE experience as a child, and then you became like a child prodigy. You had trouble in the school. When was the next NDE?
I became a professional scuba diver. I wanted to know the depthness of everything. So now I was working as a scientist. I pick marine biology. I just have fascination for the ocean, for science. I use science also as an instrument to know, to get to the outer, to get to the inner first. Sometimes everything is a reflection. I'm working in this island in the Caribbean doing a project with mangrove ecosystems, and I got my first bike. And now I was, or motorbike, and I was like very distracted, to say. Now with my career, there was a moment in which the beings of light asked me if I wanted to do these teachings, if I wanted to be more like a spiritual teacher, to say something or go to that through that realm. And I said no. No, 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 because there was a moment in my life where I wanted to be like everybody else. At a school, I was bullied, I was ostracized. I imagine a child that is so different. So when I went to college, I wanted to be like everybody else. And I said to the beings, of like, leave me alone. And people say, how could you cut with the beings so lie? You crazy. And I said, how could you leave home and pursue your own individuality and your own career? How could you leave your parents behind? But they never go anywhere. They're one call away. Same thing with the beings of light. I had to ground Adam. I had to do my own thing. I have to be my own individual. So now I'm doing my career, but I'm getting very let's call it focus in like doing human stuff, my material life, my day life, and then it came another experience to kind of send me in another course. So I got this motorbike, and I was nervous, very nervous about driving this bike for the first time. And a friend is like, "Oh, take me to my house," and his house is up in a hill. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm kind of nervous to bring you there. That's like a very steep hill. Ah, don't be a chicken." And when they call you chicken, you're like, oh yeah, really? I'm there and I'm dry. But suddenly I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, oh wow, and the bike. Look what fear does. See, fear is our enemy. Fear is actually at that moment is acting is petrifying you, it's just freezing you. And I'm like, and at that moment I'm going up in the hill, and then I guess the bike asked for a change of gear. I wasn't having enough speed. I cannot tell you what happened, Adam, but fear caused this accident.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bike fell. But maybe you talk to many near-death experiencers that have experiences where died in traumatic accidents. And I think this is probably the biggest gift, or the biggest thing I have about this, what I can share about these experiences, that people always ask me, my loved one died in a tragic accident, did they suffer? Look, Adam, even before the bike fell, I was already outside. And same thing as in the first NDE, there was so much fear. I was in horror. I cannot breathe. I was in terror. Here I was in so much fear with this bike. Same feeling. The fear was gone. No pain whatsoever. This is when, for the first time, I had the realization, physical pain belongs to the body. Physical pain belongs to the nervous system.
Oh.
Free from pain. But I have to do a little caveat. Emotional pain is a different thing. Because you see that there's some people that have negative near-death experiences is because of our attachment. I didn't have that. I didn't have that attachment.
So that the motorcycle was crashing and your body is going under the bike a little, and your body's getting scratched up and your skin is getting ripped, and you're already out of the body. You don't feel the pain. Is this like some kind of like divine gift because you are under God's protection or something? You don't feel any pain? Because some people say they get a little pain and then they leave the body, and you got no pain when you left your body. Is it like are you lucky, or does God like you better? Otherwise.
No, but no, I have had, it all depends on your state of identification. You have to understand, after having my near death, I did not have fear of death. Mm-hmm. It's different fear of how are you going to die and being nervous because you want to protect and fear of death. See, so I was very detached. I was always detached. So for me, different than from other people, I was very detached. So for me, it's like immediate to the point that when I'm standing in the middle of the road, I am in the presence of the light again. And I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go home. See, there's some people that'll be like, no, my life, no, I cannot. No, I'm so detached that I'm like, the sense of expansion, the sense of peace, the sense of calmness, the sense of like expansion. The little box again open, and I'm like, wow, I'm ready to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm ready to go home and I started to be surrounded by beings of light, somebody touched my body. And it's when the fear came back. And it's because, so look, the fear has many dresses, of course, because now somebody's touching my body, but I cannot see that person. So imagine that, who's touching me and I cannot see. Now I touch my face, and is when I realize I cannot see because I had such a head trauma that I had lost my vision. So I was rushed to the hospital. And in the hospital, I started to little by little recover my vision. And being in the room later with my friend didn't suffer major, just few scrapes. And being there with him and the doctor said to me, you had to lose your vision the moment your head hit the ground because it was such a big head trauma. And I said, no, I don't think so. I said, because I was perfectly fine. Actually, I was more than fine, and I'm completely in clarity, and I am standing in the middle of the road and I'm seeing light. So no, how could I have lost my vision if I am seeing light? And then the doctor said, and my friend said, no, Ingrid, not possible. And look at how this is so incredible, Adam. Look, see, so at that moment is when you mentioned before the clairs, Clara. At that moment, I didn't even know what a clair was. Look, it took me many years to realize that what this psychic thing, what is this? I didn't have any idea of that. And it's when, for the first time, I had the realization, I get it. I was seeing with the eyes of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
You just talked about that a few minutes. I was hearing and I was experiencing with the soul. The physical senses were in the body. I was in my inner senses.
And waking up in the hospital later?
No, when they picked me up and they touched me and I couldn't see, I was all right. I was conscious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. At that moment, I was conscious. And yeah, at that moment, I hear the people and my friend, everything. But then before that, no, I completely.
Did the beings of light come to you again? Sorry.
Oh yeah, they
With the
always been
motorcycle?
there, and you know what is amazing also about this experience was, oh my God, I don't know, was the connection, the reconnection between the soul and the body.
So at age 25, you had that motorcycle and you're already getting into the marine biology. So you're with people in the science community. Do they not believe you? Did you tell them, hey, I was standing and I could see everything and I'm in my spirit, and they don't believe it? They think you're hallucinating or having like a psychological problem?
When I was 19 years old, I have to go back a little bit because I wasn't sharing. I wasn't sharing anymore. You have to understand that this is not something that just happened to me there. I've been experiencing all this hardship throughout my entire life. I wasn't going to waste my time convincing anybody or saying, I've already been there. I already know this. See, so when this happened again, what am I going to say? I already knew. And then it took so much. The first person that started to validate me was my mom when I was in school and I started to paint beings of light everywhere. But guess what? The beings of light warned me, they're not going to believe you. But the reason why my mom believed me is because my mom also could see spirits.
The only
Yeah,
person that was on your side. Oh, wow.
exactly. And later, my grandmother actually became my teacher, my father, mother, because, but in the sense that look how important this was. That I think we cannot eliminate, we have to talk about this because my grandmother was the one that brought me to spirituality. Otherwise, we just go to the place that we just talk about these as experiences. And my grandmother became my spiritual teacher. She was raised as Catholic, but she was a very rebellious woman. And she's always felt the sense there's more, there's more. And my grandmother started to join an order called the Rosicrucian order, and after that, Buddhism and Hinduism and Kabbalah and chakras. She wanted to know
Want to
everything,
make
and
sure she's got it. Get all of them inside you.
yes, yes. And she started to bring these teachings to our house, and it's when I said, "Grandma talks like the beings of light."
Hmm.
And grandma was the one that taught me how to meditate. My mom, she taught me prayer. My grandma taught me meditation.
Hmm.
And she was the one that taught me the Om. And the very even first time I am repeating the Om, I'm already having what we know today as like Kundalini experience. My energy centers were already moving and shaking because what? Because I already have access to all these. It's like the doors never close. And then one day later in life, the being so light said to me, Ingrid, of course the doors never close because guess what? There are no doors. The kingdom of heaven, consciousness, the light of consciousness, the pure potential, the absolute God, whatever you want to call it, source is here for us always. The ones that close the doors due to conditionings, to beliefs, to experiences, to fears is us. And we start putting doors, but you could even pick a little bit open and it's always going to be there. Oh, but I'm a bit
Interesting.
afraid.
I like that.
Yes.
I like you mentioned the Om because Dr. Eben Alexander, and he said when he had his experience and he was in the core, that was the sound that God was making, like an Om. So when you learned to meditate and you said the Om sound, did that instantly make you feel closer to God because of your experience?
Yeah, so in all that connection, Adam, it was like, of course, when I had that second near death experience, I was not newbie. I was not new to these already. The being so light, I said, "Don't talk to me." My mom, when I told her I could see all these, and my mom could see spirits, she said, "But don't tell anybody because they are afraid. They're afraid of the unknown."
Mm-hmm.
So after I experienced all these and I realized what he's saying, that, oh yeah, now I got it. And of course, it's not that you integrate this in one day. It takes days. You're like, oh, so this is what happened. And then you start making sense of it and gaining clarity and perspective and all that. And it takes years. In all the research that even people like Bruce Grayson, Evan Alexander, all these research has been done. Dr. Pimbal Lomer, all these people, the pioneers in all these studies, there's a scale, and there's and this the scale of
The Grayson
Grayson
scale.
and the Grayson scale, and he also mentioned how it takes, and I don't know, you know PMH at water that she studied. Someday you have the chance to talk with her. She's the one that has done all the work of NDEs for children, and is that realization that it takes between 30 and 40 years for a child to integrate these experiences,
Hmm.
and between 15 and 20 years for an adult.
Hmm.
Because of course you have the language, you don't know, and especially if the people around you in the early 70s didn't know anything about anything of this, how can you know what you don't know?
Raymond Moody, I think he was just starting to get some attention at that time, right? In the 70s. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
very new science for everyone.
Yeah, no, and people didn't even call it science. You don't know, imagine all the resistance. I was talking not long ago with people that were telling me the story of people that were the pioneers in all this and how they were treated as crazy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Crazy, like, so it
Yeah.
only became, and the beings of light said to me at 5, it's going to take time. They were already showing me, no, not now, people are not going to believe, and they show me a future. And I remember at 19 when they said in 20 years, I was like, what? Of course, for me it felt like forever
It's a long
because, yeah.
time. So the beings of light were also giving you visions of the future in the
Yes.
NDE? Really? Did you,
Oh,
was it your
not just
personal future or the world future for all of humanity?
oh, at the beginning, I started to have just my own future, but not just in NDEs. I started to have visions since I was 4 years old, and at nine, when I was little, I knew I was going to be a marine scientist. I told my dad,
Hmm.
I'm going to be a marine scientist. At nine, I knew who I was going to marry, and at 12, I knew I was going to work for NASA. And little by little, I started to have
Wow.
access to knowing.
That'd make for an interesting job interview. Why do you want to work here? Well, I had an NDE and I had a vision and I know this is the place for me.
Yeah, this is what I was meant to be. So, and it will all work like that. Adam. It's like I didn't even have to do. It's like,
I,
oh, I meant to be here. This meant to happen. That sense of like, oh yeah, this is where I'm going to work. Yeah, it was like that.
so after a while, I'm guessing your family, your parents, they stopped questioning you. They said, Ingrid's got her plan. She knows what she wants to do. Let her be.
That was pretty much the feeling. My dad, when at five, I said, even at five, he talks about this to people. This like, how could you at five? How could she have this clarity? How could she have this knowledge? And he said, "Is that what you want to be? That's what you will do." You know, I have an uncle. Same thing. Imagine a child 5 year old. If you go ask an 8 year old, what do your aunt or your uncle do for a living, or what is their career? They don't know. Why would you know that? And then I had an uncle, his brother, that he even wasn't even living in Colombia. He was living in another country. And I came to him at five and I said, Dad, I'm going to do what my uncle Alvaro did. I'm going to be a marine scientist, just like my uncle. He's like, how could you know that? So, and I was a very knowledgeable child. So, yeah, my dad, and he even said, "Oh, you are my teacher.
Hmm.
You are, and you've always been my teacher." Yeah.
That was two NDEs. Was there a third and a fourth? Do we have time for those?
Yeah, like we can go to this that way. We just because the important thing more about anything is that the last and the closest a circle, because
Okay.
actually we talk about the four, but the four was it's hard to say
Yeah.
to to count them in order, because actually the four was the first.
Oh,
That happened just when I was an infant, but I don't have memory. That's why I never really I don't have memory, or I didn't have memory about that until my last near death.
oh.
Having the feeling of wanting to go back home, not just once, but twice, left me with a lot of depression.
Mm.
I spent a lifetime depressed because I was homesick. I wanted to go back home. And although I had what I call a big awakening, Adam, I experienced the dark night of the soul when I was about close to 40 years old. And I had what I call a big awakening going through that experience. I don't know if we have time to talk about that, but I
Yeah.
contemplated suicide and I
In
came
your
out of that.
teenage years or early 20s
No,
or
no, no. No, I was almost 40 years old.
oh.
And I was being very successful, very, very successful with my career, very successful. I was working for NASA. It was the job of my dreams, everything. But the more I walk away from my inner, it was a sense of emptiness because, again, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to be like everybody else. It was the world outside. And I meet the expectations of my family, everybody, but not the connection. Yeah, when I was a child, I had walked away from the beings of light. I had walked away from my authentic being. I wasn't sharing with anybody. Like asked me before, I knew they were not going to understand, so I wasn't ever going to try again. See, so my life became of the outer. And
And
this
there was also a
end.
time you got married and your husband had to leave for a work trip for like 7 months. That was a depressing
Yeah.
time.
Oh no, yes, it was a mix of everything.
Mm.
I have to almost have to raise my son by myself, our son by myself, because he was gone. It was a mix. I had lived in a war zone, a war zone with shooting and with death and with everything for 3 years. So all of it have left me with this huge hole. And then I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, just name it. So at this moment, I was like contemplating a night. I just thought, this is it. And then I started to pray for the first time in a long time. I had been even very busy to even pray. I felt it. I felt the sense of praying, and I wasn't asking to God to change anything. I was asking God, help me see, because I have become blinded.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand. Help me see. And then I received, like you we were talking outside the camera, but you mentioned like the voice, like I hear the voice of the beings of light. And for the first time in a long time, I received the insight of, first, wait one more day. Second, I could not, in my experience, I could not bear to see or to know my parents were going to suffer, especially my mom. My mom, I could not bear the idea of my mom suffering because I would take my life. It could not even fit in my head. So that came. And the last thing was like the clear sense of, look, imagine that you are here in first grade or second grade, and that was your purpose. That's what you came to do, and you don't pass it. Guess what? You're coming back and you're repeating. So I'm like, oh. So I was like, nobody's judging you, nobody's punishing you. You just have to pass first grade, period. That is what the soul wants to do. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to repeat all that. And I have to be a child again. I'm like, so all these clarities came to my mind, and I'm like, okay. And I was able to kind of fall asleep. When I woke up in the morning, I had the clear knowing, look for help. And then I went in and I looked for a psychologist in my area, and then I wrote his name on a paper. The very same day, I'm sitting in the NASA's cafeteria talking to a friend, and she's like, oh, my daughter, she needed some psychology help, and she's seeing this doctor. Same doctor I've written in the paper, in a piece of paper. What a synchronicity. Same day, another person mentioned the same doctor. So I had it clear, okay, I have to see this person. He was very spiritual. After a while talking, I felt openness, and she said, write a list of your sufferings, because that's cathartic, that helps. And there was a lot of, like I mentioned, trauma, sufferings, the near deaths, everything that has happened, the not belonging, everything, the feeling of wanting to go home. And then he said, in my 37 years of practice, I have never met someone that has suffered this much and is mentally stable. And it shocked me, and I was like, whoa. And I said, why me? And then for the first time, he gave me the answer that turned the light back on. He said, why not? He said, look, thanks to this, you've done this, and thanks to this, and thanks to this, that. First, I realized he's been listening, because he's not reading notes. I'm like, wow, look at the power of listening at each other. And then that right there was already a part of healing. And I was like, wow. And I started to see purpose behind everything. And for the first time, I put myself not at the level of the effect, but at the level of the cause. I stopped being a victim. I'm like, and I started to see that thanks to this, even if this brought me to be more compassionate, more loving, more caring, more empathic, more wisdom, more growth, more evolution. Wow. So I said 3 miracles happened that day, Adam. The first was the realization that nothing ever happened to me, it happened for me. So I entered in the state of gratitude. Second, it was the realization that my only truth was that I was sitting in front of this doctor and nothing else was real. Everything was a narrative in my mind, and I could do anything I wanted with my narrative. That empowered me. So now gratitude, empowerment, and is when I realized what true forgiveness really means. I realized if everything has purpose, if nothing happened to me but for me, then what is to forgive? So I could say there was nothing to forgive or everything was forgiven. And now I come out of this doctor's office, and again, but now in complete consciousness, didn't need a near death. Is when I said to people, look, a near death is not needed, just clarity, just insight, just connection. I felt the presence of, again, source or God or ultimate reality of the light of consciousness everywhere. Everywhere. There was nothing that wasn't it. And I was in this embrace, and that's what I call the big awakening happen. And is when I started to go back to connect with my inner truth. And is when the idea of writing my book, the first book, happened, and the idea of wanting to share and connect and be that I had realized started to happen. But how the last near death experience closes this whole cycle, and why it was important is because people say, why three, why four, why all these? And I said, because again, there's purpose behind everything. And I always, despite this awakening, despite everything, Adam, I was still feeling that sense of wanting to go home. And then when I had this last near death, I had a warning. It's a long story, but I'm going to make it short. I had even a warning that this was going to happen. And I heard the voice of Source, the divine, our Father in heaven, Mother, Father, I heard saying, do you trust me? And I said, yes, I do. And a couple of days after this happened, I was in a car accident. And this car accident brought me to have a surgery that I was avoiding. So it's like, again, it's like, oh, I didn't want this, but this had to happen. And before the surgery, I told the doctor something is going to happen with my blood pressure. I was very clear with what was going. You have to monitor my blood pressure. And then during the surgery, yes, my blood pressure went to the ground. I entered into hypothermia, and I was back in the light. Wow, guess what? The light is home. Home. Yeah, I'm home. And different than the other experiences, for the first time, I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to come back. In a lot of the near-death cases, it will be the part of, no, it's not your time, you have to go home. The other times, I was not asked anything. I was just sent back. Or I was, like I said, I was pushed back. This time, when I heard you want to stay, I was like, wow, what question is that? Of course I want to stay. And you know what is the incredible, that I felt kind of bad to share this later with my family, because it's not that you don't love. Actually, you are embodying love itself. So it's just a state in which you know that God's plan is perfect. Where I was in the state of complete detachment, because when you are the absolute, what is to attach to? So at that state, I'm like, wow, if I don't come back, this is my son's plan for growth and evolution, my father, my husband, my family. I just had the view, the bigger picture. And then when I was asked, oh, you want to go back, is when I said, wait a minute, is this a test? So it's when all those years of meditating and awareness and presence happened, because I said, wait, if God is everywhere, if the presence of God is always here, and absolutely everything is a manifestation of the light of consciousness, so where is here and where is there? I said, wait a minute, there is no here and there is no there. There's only states of, like when we say you close or open the window, only states of consciousness. And then I said, at that moment, the only thing that came to my mind to say was, keep me where I can serve you the most. Keep me where I can serve God the most. And at that moment, look, remember how I was in the state of complete detachment? No, you need an anchor. The anchor was like, my family, my son, my husband, my purpose. Oh, what I have to do, my service. I was back.
Hmm.
And it's when that clarity that I mentioned at the beginning came completely, that teaching came completely clear. Home is not a place, it's a state of being. But now I was completely incarnating, completely embodying that teaching. And is when I also realized it's nothing to do with dying. It's not about near death, it's about near life.
Mm-hmm.
How you can live life to the fullest with everything. Even now, I even think that fear that before I thought, oh, is a problem, is my compass. What do I need to do? What do I need to face? What is in the way is the way. And that's how I come to live life nowadays, with that state of presence. And the being so last said, oh, even when you were that little child, you were already a different kind of child, because you had another experience when you were just an infant. I just never mention it, never talk about it, because I don't remember it. That I do not have memory, but they said, ask your father. And I said, what? So nobody knew about this.
Hmm.
So that's the validation about this part of this experience. And I went and asked my dad, hey, I got the clarity, I got the message that, and I saw what had happened, that my mom put me next to him, he is sleeping, he rolled, and he smothered me. So he said, I never shared this with anybody because I thought I'd kill you. So, but imagine what this did. This free my dad for something he had whole. Look at how beautiful the universe is. Even gave my dad and I the opportunity to close a chapter that I didn't even know existed, and
Mm-hmm.
he's been holding for so many years. So I said, Dad, I mean, like, wow, you're not guilty of anything. That was just experience, and now it's all over, it's all done. And so,
Can I ask you a few questions now?
yes, yes.
Uh, in your life, there was a time you were a young child and you were in the church, and the priest was talking about fearing God, and you had to speak up, and and you questioned, like, well, God is love, and I'm not afraid of him, right? So should Christians or should people be afraid of God because the church tells us to?
Exactly. No, and that my complete and clarity and understand. I said, how can we fear the one that loves us the most? So that didn't even make sense. It was nothing in me that could make sense of it. And then, yeah, that moment, he, of course, I was just a child. I was like 10 years old. He got mad at me, and because I was questioning the teachings, and they sent me to pray. And I said, that's the moment where I felt in my heart, this is not my religion.
Mm,
But see, not that I condemn anything. I said all religions are important at some point of our lives, because people are connecting with the aspects of the spirit that they don't know. I think we have to go through everything, through belief, through no belief, through disconnect, through connect, to dark night of the soul, to all of that, to at the end really, really touch the essence that we are. But I understand that. I think that the things were misinterpreted. I think there was a misinterpretation. I think that the idea of fearing is not to fear God, but to fear that you are missing the mark, to fear that you are not doing what you meant to do. Say that you have your parents. One thing is respect, and one thing is fear.
mhm.
See, and one thing is like you respect your parents, and you you will feel guilty, you will feel bad if you're missing the mark, if you're not really responding, you're not really being the son or the daughter that you meant to be. See, it's like the fear is like my own actions. I am fearing that I am not going to be able to let's say to do what I meant to do, to follow my path of purpose, my path of service. So is but we always have to make that difference between fear and respect. See, you respect your parents, and in that respect you try to do your best to be the best child. is our responsibility. I have to take responsibility for my actions. When people blame God, I said, again, I look at this most perfect analogy. Imagine that you have really good parents and they can be the model parents, and suddenly the child pick bad friendships or pick whatever it is speaking, trouble or stealing or whatever. And the parents are always going to be there loving him or caring for her or him. And this person is making all the bad decisions,
Mm.
and the parents are going to love this child the same. That's, and of course are going to say, no, you should not be doing that, oh no, and even beat you in the head, don't, why you're acting this way. But that's because there's love and they care. That's God is always going to love us, is always going to care, and we have to take responsibility of our actions or our inactions.
Another question. You went through a time of depression and maybe a few dark thoughts, and I know I did too, and I'm sure many of our viewers are. We know this planet Earth, it's a classroom, it's not a courtroom where God's not trying to judge us. We are here to learn and continue learning. So what happens, do you know what happens for someone who decides to like commit suicide? Do they have to start over again and learn the same lessons, or do you, because the church sometimes says, oh, that's the bad thing to do, you go straight to hell. So what do you think happens if someone commits
And
suicide?
incredibly, Adam, again, there's no judgment. And what we call the life review is absolutely real. And many people can give you, and many near their experiencers and people that have had very strong, deep spiritual experiences can talk about the life review. And the life review is the part in which no one is judging you, nobody's punishing you. You realize, you take responsibility, you say, and you feel it. You feel the pain you cause to others. You feel the suffering you cause to others. And you say, wow, I came here to do first grade and I didn't pass.
Hmm.
I came here and I didn't study. Or say that, to give you again an analogy, that you are in a school and you were irresponsible and you didn't study, you didn't do this and that. And then nobody's judging you. Let's say you judge yourself. You know what is needed for your growth and evolution. And in the terms of suicide, I can share with you a very incredible experience I had. This is just not, again, knowledge I acquired for somebody else. I experienced it, that I was invited to this event where there was this workshop, and I wasn't interested in mediumship, but life guided me to be there in this group. And then in the whole thing there was this meditation, and we were guided to do this whole thing where we will connect with the spirit realm. And in this guided meditation I met two children. One was 17 or 18 and one was 3 years old. And then the oldest child started to say to me, tell my mom that I'm being loved. Tell my mom that I'm being loved. And it was very repetitive. And he said, tell my mom not to worry, not to hurry, that I am being loved. And he says, and tell my brother Benjamin, like that with name, that he's loved as well.
Hmm.
And then the other child, 3 year old, say, tell my mom Isa that I love the butterflies. And then we came back, the whole thing, and now everybody's sharing. And when it came my time to share, I was vibrating so high, and I almost couldn't talk. It was so touching. And then when I started to share, and I said, there's this 17, 18-year-old boy saying this, and he says, tell my brother Benjamin. And the mom said, wow, that's my son. She stood up. She was right there next to me, and she said, like, that's my son. And I kept saying, he's saying to you that he's being loved. And she said, I understand why. 2 weeks previous to that, he had committed suicide. See, I didn't meet him in hell. I didn't met him like this destroyed weird being. He was a being of light. And he said, I'm being loved. And tell my brother that he's loved as well. See, it doesn't mean that he has to repeat the course that he didn't pass. But
Hmm.
he wasn't being mistreated. He wasn't being, no, he was like, and tell my mom and tell that keep loving my brother too, that he needs the love. See, that was incredible. And then the other child, and I said, there was another child, a 3-year-old, and he's saying, Isa, I love the butterflies. The mom stood up. It's my son. He said, nobody ever other than him called me Isa. So there was no something I could even know. And he said, and the butterflies is because I built him a butterfly garden. And then look at this, and this is one of the most beautiful also things about this experience. One child have died 2 weeks ago, and the other child have died 30 years ago. So it's when they showed me with the contrast, again, these were contrasts. Time doesn't matter. Love is eternal. And as long as there is connection, because she had built a butterfly garden for him, for the and even she said, I wasn't even thinking 30 years. She's like, I wasn't expecting my son to show up today.
Hmm.
Love is eternal, Adam. It doesn't matter as long as there's connection. And remember, I mentioned time works differently in the realm of the spirit. So
You have a section in your book where you explain at home we lack nothing. Along those lines, do you have any tips or ideas for manifesting for people who want a good life? Like if we're lacking nothing in spirit and we are spirit, can we manifest more easily that way, if that makes sense?
yes, of course, and of course, and we mentioned already, home is not a place; it's a state of being. So a home means to be present. At home means to look what happened. Nowadays, I use anything, any experience come, and I'm like, can I be with this? Can I be the space for this? So I use anything in my path to fuel my awareness, to fuel my presence. Even a moment of anguish, even a moment of overwhelm, can I be with this? And you breathe. Look what happened. You immediately go back home. It's like you touch home. It's like when you create a space, you go from being reactive to being responsive. I call it response able. So how you get there, little by little, you start learning to calm your mind. I said to people, what do you do when you're heating the water for your coffee? Oh, nothing, watching my phone. And I said, what about one conscious breath? Give yourself the space to breathe consciously, to create that place where when a situation is going to come, you can be the space for it. See, you create distance. You create, when there's distance, you're not drowning. When there's distance, you can see. When there's distance, you can breathe. And that starts with one conscious breath. I said, what do you do? How many times do you go to the bathroom? See, because people say, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time life. And so I am giving teachings that I teach everything to be fun and
Mm-hmm.
to be easy and to be fast. That goes with a stressful, fast world. I said, what do you do when you go to the bathroom? I'm not telling you to stop there and meditate. Walk with presence. Walk with presence. What you're doing, you're teaching yourself day by day, little by little, to recognize, to know the place where from pause, you access wisdom. People say stillness is doing nothing because now there's so many teachings about stillness, but it's like, what, you do nothing? And I said, no, stillness and movement are dancing together.
Hmm.
What about you reach that place of stillness and you know what to do, where to go, when to do it, how to do it? See, from that stillness, movement happens. So you start knowing the rhythm, but that takes practice. So that's one of the things I bring people to do, start calming your mind. When you have one conscious breath, imagine with your coffee. Now you already have the one conscious breath. Now you have your coffee, smell it. I call it a candy for the soul. Look what you're doing. Oh, this smells so good. Your tea, you taste that little bitty first of your juice.
Colombian coffee.
Wow, this is good. Yeah, Colombian coffee. Look what you're doing. You're releasing hormones of well-being.
Mm.
When you release hormones of well-being, I can even bring it to the level of scientific and grounded way. It's like hormones of well-being. I call it a candy for the soul. What happens if I tell you, how do you feel when you're not afraid? Good.
So
See?
confident. I can do
Yeah,
anything. Hmm.
exactly. How do you feel when you're not tired? Good.
Yeah, I feel good. Lots of energy. I can do anything. I can go great distances, or I can get a lot of work done. Yeah.
Exactly. How do you feel when you're not sad? Good. How you feel when you're not angry? Good. How you feel? What is the default? Good.
Mm.
Good. Good is the basis of energy, the basis that you all told me right now. Good. So what is that we really are? That goodness, that space of greatness, that space of above. Good. So if I learn to go there, that's where you can be the present, the creator of your reality, the manifester, because otherwise we are like a train. Imagine a train with two heads. It doesn't matter how much you want to manifest if one side is saying, oh yeah, I want this, and the other side is saying, you're never going to get it.
Hmm.
You're denying that. You have to first go back to the basics, go back to the essence, go back to the place of calming the mind, go back to the place of where you recognize your inner goodness, your abundance, your belonging. And from there, you can create. Otherwise, it's going to be the part that, no, I joined all these groups and that's BS. That told me about creating and I cannot create anything because you're denying it. Because we are the negative bias and the negative mind is going to bring us to the no instead of, I am an abundant being, a creator of my reality, to be the puppet of the reality. See, so we have to start from there, and the other place we have to start from is the place of erasing, elevating our vibrational frequency, because we're like a radio. You cannot access, imagine if you are an AM radio and you try to catch the FM waves. It's not going to happen. You have to
Hmm.
upgrade. You have to go to a different level of frequency. You have to get a radio that can change the dial, and you have to be able to put your antenna in the place where you are going to be able to align with your inner asking and what is going to manifest appear. That place of pure potential, you have to align with it. How you know do that? You learn to calm your mind and you learn to elevate your vibrational frequency. What is the best and easiest way to elevate your vibrational frequency? Through gratitude. Gratitude is the highest vibrational frequency there is. And people say, Ingrid, is not love. And I said, wait a minute. What are the things that make you feel grateful? The things that make you feel great. Oh, great, grateful. And what are the things that make you feel great? The things that you love.
Hmm.
So love and gratitude are synonyms. But the problem is, Adam, that people don't really know love. And people have been so beaten and so frustrated, and love have been like so conditioned that we really don't know love. And oh my God, talk about love. Like, oh, there's so much suffering around it. But gratitude and appreciation is a complete different thing. Look, I have even brought help people that were in the place of complete misery to start again just by doing this practice, because I said to them, you're about to drink water. What happened right now? What have I said? I bring people to remember. Wow, look at the appreciation when you were thirsty and you have water. When
Clean
you were
water.
tired and you have a bed. When you were sad and you have a shoulder to cry. When you were hungry and you had something to eat. Go back to that. And the moment you start appreciating, wow, you start knowing love from within, and you start knowing abundance from within because you start appreciating what is, not what you don't have. Oh, look, thanks to this, and thanks to this, and thanks to this. So you have to bring yourself to vibrate high and to clear the mind. I said, if you're in a disco place with 10,000 or all the music, all the noise, how can you hear? You can't. You and I could be trying to talk. I would be hard to hear half of it, but the moment the music, all that noise is gone, you're like, wow, I don't know, I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the exact same thing. And look at how practical it is. Just walk in presence, walk in awareness, one conscious breath, get out of your car and step on the ground. Wow, presence. Listen to the birds. You cannot do meditation, walking meditation from your office to the bathroom. Be present, and then you start little by little building that appreciation, gratitude. Every time I started, every time I was catching myself with a negative thought, I was replacing it. I wasn't fighting it. I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm thinking this way, I'm fighting because what you resist persists. I wasn't fighting my mind. I was like, intentionally, I was inviting. That shower I took in the morning was so good. Oh, that coffee. Oh, that walk. Oh, my dog, when I come home, look what I'm doing. Resetting myself, resetting myself. Hormones of well-being, new neuropaths, resetting. I'm helping myself.
Thank you. I think that answered my last question. I was going to ask what was the biggest lesson you could share from all of your NDEs, but I think you summarized everything perfectly here. So I have a fun question instead. A fun question. Divertido. What is your favorite animal from the ocean, if you have one?
Oh, from the ocean, I would just say the dolphins.
The
Oh, and
dolphins?
I have been swimming with dolphins and
Really?
some friends. Oh, yeah. And then when they feel your vibration, it's incredible. They hug you. They go with the little
Wow.
and they hug you. And oh, it's incredible. I've been, yeah, swimming with dolphins and it's absolutely amazing. So there's a lot of connection. And I want to say something about just to about this one of the greatest teachings and that you can even feel with loving life, with loving dolphins, with loving animals, with all of it. I said, the being so light said to me, you don't imagine how grateful everyone would be if you realize that for you to exist, Adam, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles have to be in agreement. You are divine. You are a divine being. Because those atomic particles, they could have chosen to be anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But they hold you together. They decided to be you. So nowadays, when I see even these pen, trillions of subatomic particles decided to be this pen, so I can use it. And with the creative thinking of the universe and someone in connection, this happened. And imagine animals and plants. You have this beautiful question, nature, all here for us to remember and for us to connect with that gratitude, with that elevating state of being, to remember your divinity and your connection with whatever you want to call it, God, the light of consciousness, essence, I don't know, whatever comes to your heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
they
it.
say God is called by many names, and someone said they after their NDE, God doesn't care what you call God as long as you are calling on God. They want the
Yeah.
communication, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. That's
Well,
beautiful.
Ingrid, it has been lovely. Mucho gusto.
Ay, mucho
Encantado.
gusto.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
it's
was
been amazing.
really amazing. Or your website, how people can find you?
Oh, yes, thank you. I have a website, ingridhonkala.com. There I do all the announcements or all the events I am doing. And in my website, you also can find my books. I have written two books for adults and books for children. I'm also writing for children.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of My Spirit Lives On. Mi espíritu perdura. Is that right?
Sí, sí, mi espíritu perdura. Mi espíritu es
Good.
eterno. Eternal.
Thank
Eternal
you.
light in us. Oh, thank you
It
so
was
much.
really great to meet you. So
It was great to meet you too.
have a blessed day and adios.
Because my spirit lives on. Yeah, it's with you. I miss you. My spirit lives on. Yeah, it's with you. I miss you. My spirit lives on.